Welcome. For those of you who are new here, we are Ama La Vida. We are a career life leadership, health and wellness coaching company. Our name means love life in Spanish, and that is what we're all about, is providing tools and resources and coaching to help everyone create lives that they love. And it's our primary mission. It's something that we're very, very passionate about. We are here with Disha from Here Market. And Disha is, excuse me while I read this. That's what I'm doing to make sure I get this right. Disha is the founder and CEO of Here Market, which is a specialty market for chef-driven and artisanal foods. Prior to this, Disha was the VP of Corporate Innovation for 1871, one of the largest tech incubators in North America. We're so excited to have you here, Disha. Welcome.
Thank you.
Amazing. So with that, I will go on mute. I'm going to spotlight our heroines of the hour and we'll get going.
Oh, I love that intro. Disha, 2 times in 2 weeks, I'm seeing you. What a treat.
No, it's fantastic. Running into each other at the Chicago. Where were we at? The Tech Week, right?
Tech Week. Yeah, it felt like all of Chicago tech was ready to come out of the COVID woodwork and get together. So it was good to see you.
It was so fantastic. I think it was one of the first events after the pandemic that I went to. So it was so good to see you and Forum. It was fantastic.
I know, the whole crew, likewise. I'm curious about this question because, and this is where I want to start. We're talking about your business, we're talking about how to motivate your team, but why we're here is founding females. We're female founders supporting and lifting each other up. And I'm curious how people become founders, if it's accidental, if it's something like they were the person who at 6 years old built this landscaping or babysitting empire. Like that was not me at all. I think about the Richard Bransons and the Mark Cubans, and it feels, I think, intimidating that like, oh, that's not my natural way I move through the world. Like, can I still be an entrepreneur? So I'm curious from you, how do you think you got here? Why did you choose this insane career path? And like, what types of things do you feel in your personality are suited for it?
Okay. So yes, I would say kind of first time entrepreneurs, for them, I think ignorance is bliss because you just don't know what you're getting into. So you're very optimistic because, I think our society really glamorizes the good bits about entrepreneurship and doesn't really talk about the really dark days and the deep holes you find yourself.
Totally.
So
I always say the most confident I ever was in my business was the day I quit my job to start it. And every day since I've been terrified. So I'm totally with you on the ignorance is bliss piece and like having that naivety that like allows you to make that leap.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's so funny because when I left my corporate career and, kind of told people that I'm going to go and start my own company, the adjective that most people use were, wow, you're so brave. And I was like, what? That's interesting. Not like you have a great idea, not like, oh, how exciting, such a risk. You're just so brave to like leave a career behind to start something. And Nicole, I think I was like you. I've actually always just been a good corporate soldier. Like I when I was younger, I always thought of life as this like video game, right? Where you kind of complete the first level and the next level and the next level is a little harder, but you actually know what all the levels are and you've looked them up already, right? So, finished undergrad, went to Deloitte, became a consultant, went from an analyst to a consultant to a senior consultant to a manager. And like, you just knew the steps and you were like, okay, I'm a partner. And that's like where you're kind of, you've arrived type of deal. Went and got my MBA and I was like, yeah, you just keep on moving. And what I kind of thought of my career as an hourglass, right? So, learning a lot from consulting, learning a lot from kind of working with clients, things like that. But as I got more specialized, I felt like I was missing kind of this. I wanted to run a business. I wanted to be a generalist. I wanted to know what was happening in accounting. I wanted to know what was happening in finance, in marketing. But the higher up I kind of went in my corporate career, they were starting to pigeonhole me more and more and more, like pick an industry, pick a specialty. Are you like a marketing person? Are you a finance person? Are you a tech person? Are you an analytics person? Are you an ops person? And to me, that's when I was like, well, how do I get a role that is more of a generalist role, right? And I had, I had two options. I could either kind of maneuver my career. At the time, I was working for Mondelez International, and I was, kind of head of global analytics. So I was, I had a very specific mandate, and I could have maneuvered my career to like be a general manager somewhere, but it would have taken me years. And the other option I had was to be an entrepreneur, kind of start something on my own and be that generalist and take the skills that I had, I'll say, collected over the years, right? So to me, that's how I came to entrepreneurship. That, and the other kind of natural inflection point for me was when I went back to school to get my MBA. I was at Booth, and it's known for many things, but one of the things it's known for is entrepreneurship. So there was a lot of chatter and talk about entrepreneurship and VCs and things like that. And at the time, I took the classes. I in fact majored in it, but I put it away and I said, oh, this is interesting, but it just personally didn't feel like the right time in my career to go do that. Then fast forward a few years, I felt like I had enough experience. I knew what I wanted, and I wanted to be that generalist.
That's interesting, because I feel like a lot of times people come to entrepreneurship because they're so passionate about a specific idea that they're like, the only way I can make this happen is to start it myself. Yeah. Whereas it feels like for you, it was more, this is what I want for my life, which is to be able to be a dabbler and be curious about lots of different things. And it seems like, okay, entrepreneurship allows that. Is that right? Or like, how did you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, I talked to so many people who are like, oh, I really want to quit my corporate job and I want to start doing something on my own, but I just don't have an idea. And honestly, when I quit my job, I had an inkling of an idea. Yeah. And literally my guardrails were, I've done corporate, I've done consulting. Now I want to do that, what I'm going to enjoy doing. I didn't get to pick the industries I consulted in. When I went to corporate, I did CPG was interesting to me, but I was like, I want to pick an industry that I'm interested in. I want to solve a problem that I find exciting. And honestly, when I started my first company, it was a problem that I experienced, but I wasn't like, oh my goodness, the world needs to solve this problem. I just felt like I had the right tools and skills that I had collected over the years to run a successful business. And I wanted to just go see if I could truly do that. And so the idea actually came after I decided to be an entrepreneur.
Interesting. Okay. Mine was the reverse, where I found myself in the problem and was like, someone needs to solve this. And so I guess that's going to be me. And kind of meandered my way there, where it was like started with a blog and then kind of snowballed. And so I do think even in your case where it was an intentional move, people really ask me all the time, like, how do you go from this is an idea, or this is a vision I have, or maybe they now pick the idea since they have the vision for their life. How do you go from this just being that inkling to like, oh no, I'm doing the thing and I've quit my job? Or did you start it while you were still in your MBA program and that was the next move? Or did you literally have to walk in and be like, I quit, I'm doing this thing?
Yeah, I actually, and I don't recommend this, by the way, this is the most successful strategy. I was like, 5 years past my MBA. So this is what I'm saying. Okay. I tucked it away when I was doing my MBA that I one day want to be an entrepreneur. But so when I quit my job, I wasn't like super satisfied with what I was doing. But the job was so demanding that it was a global role, had 100% team. I didn't have the mental space to actually think about what I wanted to do next. So to me, I kind of had to quit cold turkey, take 3 months and really think through how I wanted to move past this point in my career. I don't recommend that for everybody because it's really scary. In those 3 months, I was just like, what am I doing? And as I quit, I was actually getting other job offers, and they were like, oh, you're leaving, come join us. And that was really tempting because I was like, well, I know how to do this. Like, this would be easy. So I would say actually the best way to do it is to create a glide path, right? Just like you were saying, Nicole, like start a blog, talk to people. And so if I were to do this again, I would actually create a glide path. I would say, because what I realized when I quit cold turkey was I actually didn't have a network in the startup ecosystem to like hit the ground running. And I had to build that while I was trying to build a company. Right. And in hindsight, I believe that you can actually start building your network, identifying your resources, starting to run some tests before you actually quit your job.
I totally agree. And I did have some semblance of that path where it was an escalation, but I still quit cold turkey at some point for a similar reason to you, where I felt like it was a little chicken and eggy. Like I'm not totally comfortable quitting because this thing isn't big enough and real enough for me to do that. But also if I don't quit, I'm never going to get big enough and real enough. So I just have to go for it. But it was definitely premature. And I think the biggest part is what you said, which is testing. And then I ended up spending a year blowing through resources, doing that testing that I probably could have done in parallel while still at my corporate job.
And honestly, Nicole, I don't think there's a right answer, because like when you are in your job, you're so comfortable. Like I have seen a lot of people go into analysis paralysis, right? Which is like, I'm going to just research the market and I'm going to create this 100-page kind of, slide deck with all the reasons and create this business. I mean, you and I both know this, the business plan goes out the window like day 3. Right? Like it's nothing what you ever imagined it to be, right? So people just kind of stay in that gray area of like, I'll say a zombie business plan, which is like they keep on adding to it and having a conversation a week, and it really never, takes off. So at some point you have to quit and like, channel all your resources towards it and light that fire under you, so to say, right? Because otherwise you'll just stay in this comfort world where you're like, oh, it's my side project, and very few side projects have ever become unicorns.
Very true. I think you end up disguising procrastination as research so you can feel good about continuing to do it, but you're really putting off the inevitable. There definitely becomes a shift. So I think you're spot on with that. So you've mentioned and I don't want to talk too much about this because we're here to talk about here and how you motivate your team, but you did start a bit. This is not your first time as an entrepreneur. You've had an initial venture. How did you know when it was time to let that one go and start the next one? Because I think one of the challenges I see with entrepreneurship, with female entrepreneurship in general, is it's usually not for lack of a great idea that things fail. It's because we just don't have enough runway to do all the testing, to pivot enough times that you get it to where it works. And so I could see myself in a similar situation being like, well, I didn't stick it out long enough, or I need to try one more thing. And how did you know, okay, this one isn't the one for me, or it's no longer the thing and I need to do something else?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was almost like, so like I was telling you, when I was so cocky when I was like, run big projects, big organizations, how hard can it be to start a small company? And if folks here today are working for Fortune 500 companies, the skill set, the resources, the type of mental kind of planning that you need to do in a large company fulfilling your role versus starting a company from scratch are so different. If you think of a Venn diagram, the overlap almost doesn't exist, right? So so when I started the first company, I was like, okay, I'm gonna put my deck together. Everything I'm telling you, like, not to spend time on. Put my deck together, go and talk to investors. They'll give me money on the idea that I have, and kind of my resume, so to say. And didn't have a co-founder, didn't think through any of these things. And what I realized is, truly a big part of starting a company is the village that's willing to support you. And the village just doesn't come because you have this great idea, right? The village comes from the network that you build, the data points that you provide to the network, the peer set that you build, right? Like I had no idea where to get developers from to kind of build this out. I had no idea that to build a fashion company, that's what I started first, in the Midwest would be way harder than building it on the coast, because the Midwest is known for logistics and for SaaS and things like that. It's certainly not known for fashion, right? The VCs here don't invest in that category largely. There aren't a lot of big There are a lot of CPG companies here, a lot of, logistics companies here, airlines are here. But, if you think about even big clothing companies and things like that, very few are headquartered in the Midwest. So to me, the scaffolding for my first business didn't really exist. And it felt like I was pulling teeth. So, but what I didn't stop doing was kind of putting myself out there, talking to people, building my network. So as I was kind of like truly starting to think about where this business was going as a one-woman show, I had, in one of my kind of networks, I had the opportunity to meet some folks from Gordon Food Services, which is the third largest food distribution company in the world. And, they kind of were like, hey, we're working on this idea. We know you have this startup. Are you, how far down are you? Because we have this idea we would like to spin off as a company, and we're looking for a founder if you'd be interested, right? So to me, there was a reason to shut down that company, because, when I had this strategic investor who was ready to back this next idea. I had a network that I was walking into. I had capital I was walking into. So I was fortunate in that way. But the only reason I was fortunate was because I actively, while building the company, was also building my network, right? So I took on a part-time job at 1871, which, Nicole, that's where you and I met, actually, right? Which is a tech incubator. So I could just kind of, increase my aperture in this community. So one of the mistakes I see a lot of early stage founders do is, okay, I'm building my company now. I don't have time for anybody else and anything else, right? Like that actually is not the best idea, because what happens if this one idea that you're so focused on doesn't work? Right? So and the idea can only grow. And I don't know if you get this, but when I first started the idea, I was very much like, I'm not going to tell anybody my idea. I don't want people to steal it. And let me tell you, this is like the biggest fallacy ever, because, you're probably not the only one who has this idea. It's all in the execution.
Oh, 100%. My husband tells me all the time how he invented Uber. And I'm like, yeah, you and a million other people who were like cold in Chicago. Like,
right.
Yeah, it'd be great if a cab just came, but guess what? You're not the one who went out and built it. So I'm totally with you. And you do feel that fear. And I think even now, when we're meeting with other competitors, I tend to go really far on the side of like, I'll share anything that can be helpful to people and to our category as a whole, because I think we all benefit from it, because it's never the idea that's the hard part. It's all the details of the execution, and specifically what we're here talking about today, which is like the people side of it, which we talk at Ama La Vida about leadership all day, every day, and it's still the hardest part of my job. So for sure, I'm with you on that. So I know Libby gave us a little intro in the beginning. Will you share a little bit more about what Here Market does?
Yeah, so Here Market is we call it a specialty marketplace. And basically what it does is it connects culinary creators. So think chefs who, kind of build their own products, right? Or think restaurants who are really known for their pasta, and now they've come up with their own dried pasta that they're trying to get directly to the consumer, right? So we specialize in food. We specialize in CPG food, consumer product food, and all of the products that are on our platform are made by either chefs who own or run restaurants, or your favorite kind of food artisans from your favorite farmers markets. What we're basically trying to do is, democratizing access in the hospitality world. So it used to be that the traditional path for somebody who worked in hospitality was, you worked in the kitchen, it was minimum wage, work-life balance is poor, opportunities to kind of go up are limited. But you're super talented, right? So what do? So we've created this platform. Think of it as Etsy, but for food creators instead of crafters.
It's amazing. I love it. And I feel like it's my go-to now for every gift that you ever need to buy for anyone for the rest of your life. Like such a great, amazing products, a ton of Chicago local products, which is so cool. So what was the option previously for the chefs and artisans that are on your platform? Was that like trying to get either selling it physically in their restaurant or trying to get into grocery stores? Like what were they doing before?
Yeah, so there's like a pre-pandemic story to this and a post-pandemic story. And so prior to, so I think what happened is a couple of things happened. When the pandemic hit, a lot of talent got furloughed from restaurants, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that happened. And then the second thing, a lot of people who had corporate jobs but were very passionate about making food were like, screw this, I can't be on another kind of Zoom meeting, I'm going to quit my job and bake for a living, or create my mom's kind of recreate my mom's jardinera recipe in one of the commercial kitchens. So access to commercial kitchens became really kind of plentiful. A lot of talent that previously was so busy working in restaurants found themselves, with some time on their hands, right? And from a consumer perspective, consumers got really comfortable with buying food online, right? And all of this kind of created the perfect storm for creators, culinary creators, to kind of go out and go directly to the consumer selling their product. However, kind of what happened is these guys are great at making food, but not so good at running D2C e-com businesses.
Sure.
So a lot of them would like come to us and say, help us with distribution and fulfillment and shipping, or help us with kind of market exposure and customer acquisition. And the more we worked with this talent on a one-off basis, what we realized is, there is, we need a marketplace just like Etsy, but that's focused on food. The reason something like an Etsy doesn't work is because, people don't know where the food is coming from people's kitchens and things like that. So the difference is that we work with professional creators who work out of commercial kitchens or restaurants and not out of people's homes, right? And there's a level of kind of due diligence that is to be had to be on our platform. So you can, kind of rest be assured that,
you can trust it.
Yeah, you can trust it, and with food, that's important, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, you started pre-COVID. So all of this kind of perfect storm was a fortunate thing in some ways that happened to your business in particular, but there's still that very difficult thing to do of getting people excited about the vision, which I think is the first step in this whole, like, how do you motivate your team when it's your company, you're the founder. So who were those first employees and how did you get them pumped? Were these people who were like, just loved food? Were these people who were just that you knew and have been part of that scaffolding that you had been building? How did you get people excited when it was still, even though you had a great structure to start off, like a very risky proposition?
Yeah, so let me tell you kind of my darkest day with this company, and the darkest month with this company. So we started just before the pandemic, and we actually didn't start with this idea. We were working with restaurants, and we were trying to solve a different problem, which was around group dining. That's where we kind of started our journey.
Okay, I remember that now.
Late 2019, and I was when we launched our MVP in February of 2020. I was 9 months pregnant, and I felt really good about leaving the company with my now co-founder and saying, we built the MVP. All the team needs to do is deploy it in Chicago. That was the first market we were going to. And I was going to go away on mat leave for a couple of months. And, I felt like I had all the pieces in place, all the partners. We had all these amazing restaurants that were willing to like test with us, so on and so forth. I had my son February 10th, and then March 15th, all restaurants in Chicago closed their dining rooms.
Oh my gosh, Disha.
And so I was 35 days postpartum. And so I didn't first child. So, I mean, you just don't even know what you're like working through or working with. And the team called me and said, we have no business. I mean, group dining is illegal right now in all 50 states. What do you want us to do? And I was just like, what is happening? Like, why are you So we
Yeah,
decided,
you're 1 month postpartum,
Yeah.
you're launching a business, and all of a sudden your business is illegal overnight.
yeah, overnight. And I was just, and I still, like, I cannot forget this conversation that I had. And I was just like, okay, well, restaurants will open back up in a week. Like, in the history of the world, restaurants have never been closed for more than a few days. Like, even a few days is unheard of, right?
Right.
And we all know how that story ended, right? Like 1 year later, restaurants were still just opening back up. So the pivot for us was actually very organic, but in an amazing way, in that we already had these relationships with restaurants. So we said, okay, we don't have a business where we think we'll take a pause for a month, but let's go back out and help our community, because they're really hurting, and they don't even know what to do if they can't serve people and feed people in their dining rooms, right? So we started to work with them, and that's how kind of the idea of Here Market kind of came. But it took us a solid year to get there. We launched Here Market last year in August, so we're just coming up on our 1 year anniversary.
That's
but,
amazing.
But honestly, I like where we're at today and what we're working on today, just from like a market size perspective, from a impact perspective, is 100-fold bigger than what we had originally set out to do. So for all the dark days, there's sometimes rainbows at the end of that journey. So
Totally, it was meant to be. I wish I had called you and knew that you were doing that, because mine was a similar but different story, where we were, I think, 3 weeks into the pandemic, our pipeline totally dried up, and I found out I was pregnant with my first child and was like, how am I gonna have this baby when this business is totally gone? So yeah, we should have commiserated. But I mean, to your point, it ultimately pushed you in the direction that you needed to go. So I guess back to then knowing that, who were those people doing that? Did you keep them motivated throughout that time, when you're sitting here going, oh shit, so but you don't want them to feel that? So how are you kind of keeping your cool but keeping them invested in the business?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of being very transparent and being very, like, I mean, I don't know no one knew what's going to happen with the pandemic, right? So
yeah,
we kind of rebuilt this company together. So the team felt very kind of committed in terms of like not recreate, creating something new, right? So and for us, it was a large part of my team actually comes from the hospitality industry. So for us, it was that mission, like, we have to help the hospitality industry, right? Like, we have the skills and the resources to help them diversify their revenue streams. And that literally was just our one objective, right? If we could make money, that's great. If we couldn't, I had a little bit of runway because we had some seed capital from our investor. So I didn't feel like your meeting payroll would be tremendously hard, but like, I mean, that I didn't feel the pressure for a few months, and then we needed to really come back and figure out how we could be revenue positive, right? So I feel like the team every single person on the team felt like an owner at that point, and not just an owner in the business, but kind of owning the bigger outcome for our local hospitality industry. I mean, I can't tell you how many independent chefs, pastry chefs, mixologists that we worked with, how many restaurants we worked with. I mean, it honestly, that December was our best month the company had experienced. Now, granted, we were new and we could only grow, but the 2020 pandemic, we were in the heart of it, and we did as well as we'd ever done. So yeah. So when times get tough, there's two ways to motivate people. You either incentivize them with money and say, I'll pay you a lot of money to stay here, or you kind of, appeal to their bigger kind of mission, or like what drives them. And we didn't have the money, so we went towards the mission.
I love that. And I think even back to this thing that we're doing is hard. Like even for me, when I get lost in which inevitably happens, I think to every entrepreneur, of like, why did I even start this? Why didn't I take this route? Like re-anchoring myself around like what I believed so much in that day that I quit that got me to do it. That's always what gets me to keep going. And I think each person on the team has their own relationship with that mission, but I think still re-anchoring around that is helpful. I think to your point about transparency and people feeling like an owner, I love that. And also I struggle with that because at the end of the day, I'm the owner and I don't want to put responsibility on someone that's not there. So for example, like the financial viability of the business, like I'm waking up at 2 a.m. worrying about that, but that's not their problem per se. And I think a lot of leaders do this. Actually, my coach, I work with a coach here at Ama La Vida. She just sent me an article about leaders taking too much responsibility. I think I'm guilty of that, where I have absorbed that and maybe don't give enough people an opportunity. But how did you either go about that, or how do you feel comfortable having everyone or asking your team to care, knowing there's always going to be a different level of care that you have because it's your baby?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have got, to me, when the team is small and resources are limited, you have to truly understand what motivates every team member in your organization, right? Individually, right?
Okay.
Because everybody doesn't have the same motivation, right? So to give you a few examples, I have somebody on the team who is so immersed in the mission. Like she is out and out and a hospitality person, and her dream is to kind of help this community, right? And so what appeals to her is how we're transforming this industry. I have somebody else who is a career changer, right? And worked in a big organization, hated it, and wanted to try different things. But with her skill set, she could only get the same of what she didn't want to do. So what she wants to do is get exposed to the different facets of the business, right? She is just excited that she can not only kind of color within the line, she can color outside. Like one day she's doing ops work, one day she's doing marketing, one day she's doing something else. Like, so for her, the body of work is really important, right? So it is my responsibility to make sure that the projects we funnel to her kind of meet that need for variety and change and diversity. And in a small startup, everybody wears multiple hats, so it's much easier to do that than in a more mature organization, right? For someone else, honestly, it's the windfall gain that comes from exiting a startup that has some kind of a significant valuation at the end of the journey, right? So we have people who are in it for the options and the equity. Great. I mean, you just have to find like what is the currency that motivates that individual, and then incentivize them in that way, right? And then I actually have folks who just like to come to work, like they love the culture that we've built, right? And they don't particularly care for the problem we're trying to solve. They could solve this one or the next one or the next one, but they love being in this community, learning from this community, right? And just kind of look forward to that. So again, like if you could take the time with your team and understand what motivates them, I promise you, 9 out of 10 times, money will not be the number one consideration.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. And I think what you're getting at is what I see being the biggest mistake that bigger companies typically have, are companies who are solely thinking in currency, in dollars.
Right.
It's just this blanket, like we're going to give everyone swag, or we're going to give everyone a raise. And it's true, like it's unique to each individual, but that's hard. It takes a lot of effort and takes an empathetic person to want to spend the time to do that, and to believe that that's also not just altruistic, but is beneficial for the business. What do you see the bigger companies are missing And how do you make something like that scalable?
Yeah, I mean, it truly is that, right? Like the bigger companies, when it comes to career progression, right? And the experiences that employees have, it's very cookie cutter. Like this is your ladder that goes up, and these are the things you need to do to get there. But honestly, in the pandemic has kind of reinforced this for us, right? That your career is a lattice. Like sometimes you just want to move laterally and try different things, and you just want that opportunity, as opposed to going from in the same kind of very narrow set of responsibilities, kind of go up and up and up. And some people want to do that. Great, understand that and create the space for that. And for others, create the space for rotations and create the space for something that's one of the things that when I was just leaving Mondelez, they were starting to, which was great, was these secondments, where it was almost even like you get to go work for another organization, right? And that is the only way you can get exposure to. I mean, a lot of times we know what we don't like, but we don't know where we go from here, right? I mean, that's one of the foundational pillars of Ama La Vida, is like, how do you figure that out? And I think companies can do more with helping you figure that out. But I truly feel like traditionally managers are not empowered or given the right set of tools to help their employees do that. But it can be done.
Coaching's the answer, Disha. They need coaching.
Yeah, right. No, but truly, it truly is. And I had a career coach at my last job, and she kind of unlocked certain things for me that made me realize that I didn't want to be there. So I don't know if that was a good investment on the company's behalf, but and even during our darkest days, when, as you know, Nicole, like we think about, does this company have a future and what's going to happen? I think about the alternative, which is, would I rather be here or where I was? And the answer always, without a doubt, is I'd rather be here going through these emotions than back there. For me, it's not for everybody, but just having that confidence and knowing that you are at the right place, like, really takes you far.
Yeah, I love that. I love a framework, always going back to consulting days. So like having that question to check in with yourself. I don't know if you remember Betsy from 1871. She asked herself 3 questions every quarter. I don't remember exactly what they were, but it was like, am I still learning? Am I having fun? So I love this. Like, would I still rather be here doing this thing than the other thing? Like, great, I'm still on the right path, even if what it looks like today is different from what I thought it would. You gave some great examples of the ways that you motivate each individual person based on their currency. What do you do as an organization that are non-monetary benefits that your team really enjoys? Do you have certain perks, or what are some of the aspects of the culture that other teams might be able to implement?
Yeah, I mean, we're a food company. We feed our team all the time. I cannot tell you, we have interns this summer, and there gets every other afternoon, we have a sampling station, and then they kind of think through like what it is we're sampling today, and they'll go like get popcorn or fries or whatever, like just to augment the sampling experience that we're having. So definitely food gets really, really far with at least our organization. Like I said, they're all foodies. This is why we're here. But in addition to that, is giving them access to resources, which I think is very important. And this is a conversation I have with all of them. Like 9 out of 10 startups actually shut down. So the probability of our startup being successful is slim. I mean, I hate to say this out loud, but in our minds, Nicole, as founders, we know this, right? Even though we don't need to talk about it.
When our friends and family are sure to remind us.
I don't know if you're what are you going to do next?
You're so brave.
Yeah. And I always get like, what are you going to do after this? I'm like, why is there an after this? This is going to be amazing. But truly, I mean, these are the facts, right? So what I try to understand for my team is, if we were to shut down tomorrow, like, where do they see themselves? Like, where would they go and what would they like to do? And so I try to make sure, not just internal experience, we talked about exposing them to the right projects and opportunities, but also externally, right? Like, how do I expose them to the right people, resources, so on and so forth, right? We talked about Tech Week. I truly encourage the team to go attend Tech Week so they can be exposed to different things. We're lucky to be here in Chicago and have access to these amazing tech incubators, right? And I'm always telling the team, hey, you want to learn about, you don't know how, venture-backed financing works, go take a class upstairs. We're lucky that it's in the same building, go take a class upstairs and learn more about that, right? So kind of giving them opportunities. I'm always sending them webinars and saying, hey, I know it's $25, $30, whatever it is, just go take it.
Yeah.
Like, learning on the job is great, but how, to me, them learning outside, whether it is learning to network, learning to grow their professional skill set, is very important to me. And I kind of put that front and center. And honestly, if you truly have that as an objective, it's not super expensive. You don't have to sign up for these learning big LMS systems or things like that. You can find a ton of opportunities that are inexpensive for the team.
I really love that question, if we were to shut down tomorrow. And I think that's good even for non-startups, because I think a lot of the time, I think like you do, I want to create opportunities for people that are tailored to what they want. But if you ask them where they're headed, I think there's always this fear of am I allowed to say that? What if it's outside of the company? What if it's something slightly controversial? And so you remove that. It's we're shut down tomorrow. What is your path looking like? And then how do we find those opportunities to help you grow that skill set here? So I'm gonna steal that one.
Yeah.
And Libby, honestly, you're looking at me like I'm chattering too long.
No, I love this. And I love that idea. I think it's something that we talk about a lot here at the Ama La Vida side, as well as thinking about active career management is something that's so important that so many people don't do anyway. Everybody should be asking themselves what skills they want to be building and what things they're really passionate about, so that they can go start their own business or do all of these other things that they're very excited about. So I love that. I wanted to offer, we've got about 15 minutes left in the hour. The chat has been immensely quiet. I think it's because your conversation has been wonderful and folks are just absolutely enthralled. But if anyone does have any questions for Disha or Nicole, our two amazing founders, please feel free to hop in the chat. I dropped in some links there so that you can check out Here Market if you want to take a look. We've got Disha's link in there. I also included a link to check out Ama La Vida's website, and I included a link as well for a complimentary consult. And if this is something that you're thinking about, we already talked about leadership coaching a little bit, and Nicole's working with a leadership coach. I've worked with a leadership coach in the past. Coaching is immensely helpful in helping you kind of figure out where you want to be going or what you want to be doing next. There's so much more that's in our control than I think many of us are led to believe. And the conversations are so fun. You'll talk to one of our relationship strategists who will just understand a little bit more about what's going on in your life, what's going on in your brain, and how a coach may or may not be the right fit for helping you. So feel free to jump in. There's the calendar. The calendar is first come, first serve. So you're welcome to hop in there. And we've got a question in the chat. Are we ready? Let's do it. What are some of the general skill sets you found that were most helpful in moving into the food space?
Wow. Okay. I would actually say I'd like to think one of my superpowers is actually being an outsider coming into the food space, because, you start to question certain things you see and you're like, well, why? This doesn't seem efficient, or why are we doing it this way? And a lot of times it's like, well, this is how it's done. I mean, think about the traditional kind of distributor, the retailer model. It's very inefficient for small brands. It's very expensive for small brands, but that's always how it's done. So we're starting to be like, but there's inexpensive D2C ways to get to the market. So why are we not pursuing that? It's because people just don't know how to do it, right? So I would say my general kind of business skills, bringing them to the food space has been immensely helpful. Also, what is helpful is at this level, I'm not talking about CPG, Sophie, but more at this, small brand level. There isn't a lot of kind of alignment to the big mission. And it's a very fragmented community. Like people don't really know each other that are building similar products or things like that. So what has been helpful for me is to kind of bring that type of, how do you convene similar founders? How do you convene people making similar things, selling similar things, having the same customer segment in mind? How do you convene them, bring them together, give them the tool sets to collaborate with each other? This is like basic 101 large corporation consulting stuff, but that kind of organization and structure does not exist in the nascent food space. So to me, kind of bringing process and general business skills feels like is something that is resonating with this community. Does that answer your question?
That's great. Really, really beautiful, Disha. Thank you. The next question we got in the chat is on understanding individual motivators. Have you ever tried to discuss in a group setting, or do you do this one-on-one? And if so, if in groups, how do you address this in groups?
Yeah,
Hey, Allison. Allison's an amazing founder herself, so good question.
Hi.
Great question too, Allison. I think so definitely in one-on-ones, and especially when I'm interviewing folks, I want to understand like why they're interested in working for such little money. And so definitely, we try to kind of, align on, will this person be a good fit from a culture perspective, but also from their motivation perspective. And then in a group setting, there's a couple of different ways to do it. Like when it's a small team, everybody knows everyone's story and everybody knows where they're trying to get to, right? So kind of being open and honest in that way, I think within the group is helpful. And also to I would say task each other with saying, okay, how am I responsible in terms of giving this person the right exposure that they're looking for, right? So we have someone on our team who truly one day wants to be a food entrepreneur themselves. Great, we know that, so we know that they're here transiently, maybe for the experience, right? So how do we create the right set of experience? And everybody on the team knows that, and they try to give them, even like, oh, you want to make this product. I just talked to a food maker who's doing something similar. This data might be interesting for you, right? So kind of getting the entire village to mobilize behind every single motivation, I think is really helpful. And then the second thing is I do try to get the team to be very honest about how they are feeling, if that makes sense. So, kind of when we do check-ins and meetings, how are you feeling? Are you feeling overworked? Are you feeling like, you're doing something that you really weren't like on point to do, or, this is not really filling your bucket, if that makes sense, right? And we have those conversations openly. And sometimes they're tough. Sometimes it's like, I've been having to do this, which I'm not enjoying doing because we're not doing what we're supposed to do, right? So kind of having those candid conversations in a group setting, for us, has been tremendously helpful, because then if someone's in a bad mood or a foul mood or is feeling frustrated underwater, you kind of know why, as opposed to just being, I'm going to stay away from this person. They don't seem to be having a good day.
Or making assumptions or internalizing it for something that has absolutely nothing to do with what's really going on.
Exactly. So kind of talking about everybody's, to the extent, some things are just best left in one-on-ones, but to the extent you can share, I think talking to everybody about their journeys is helpful. We kid about, oh, one day you're going to be this person, outside the company, right?
Yeah.
How do we get you there? How do we get you more on TV, right? We joke about it, but then we also think about it seriously. And as leaders, I think we have to find spaces to give others a platform to shine as well, right? And sometimes what happens is the identity of the founder and the company becomes so intertwined that others kind of feel lost. So how do you kind of take that away and give other people kind of that opportunity to shine as well? Feel like I'm rambling, Allison, but hopefully that was helpful.
This is great. Thank you.
I love how you said mobilizing everyone to do this, because it does feel then, I think I'm sure a lot of leaders, they're like, how can I possibly remember what every single person's motivator is, what every single person's goal is. Now I'm the one who's solely responsible for finding all these opportunities, but like, great, let's share it. And now when Libby comes across something, when Justice comes across something, we're all sending that along, and it's no longer, it's just so much more powerful in numbers and less of a feeling that I have this responsibility. So I love that. Stealing so many things from you, Disha. This is why. See, so when Disha mentioned I was in an accelerator at 1871, and she was one of my mentors, and she's incredibly gifted at being really in tune with how people are feeling, being both real and aspirational. And so really wanted to get her wisdom on this topic, and it has proved invaluable. So
Nicole, you have a way with words. No, I mean, honestly, like we're nothing if like our teams are not performing at 100%, right? Like no one person can build a company. No one person can raise a baby, you need a village. No one person can build a company, you need a village, right? So how do you truly mobilize that village? And mobilize it in a way that you enjoy coming to work every day, right? Like, so if you're kind of incentives are always driven by money or driven by, something that is short term, then people are going to just be here for a very transactional reason, right? I mean, I'll give you guys, I know we're running out of time. I'll give you an example. I had somebody who was working for me, and this was when we were pivoting, so I definitely couldn't pay them well. And they were part-time with me. And I said, I tell you what, I can't pay you well, but I actually know a couple of corporations that are looking for a similar skill set. What if I introduce you to a bigger company that can probably pay your market rate? Would you then consider working with me as well? And she was like, great, I actually need 40 hours. You're not giving me 40 hours to begin with, and the rate is low. Great. We set that up, and she was amazing. She worked with us for like 7 or 8 months. And then the corporation I had introduced her to actually asked her to come on full time. So I kind of, I don't know if I, created my own endpoint with this relationship, but I know that at a time when I can pay market, at a time when, I am ready to like hire talent back, she will be one of the first calls I make. And, she's forever grateful that I created this path for her. Right. So I think even when you think about motivating kind of your team, you've got to think short term, but also long term. Like people will come back. There's a lot of boomerang effect when you do good things for people in their careers.
Amen.
Love that. So we are wrapping up. Any closing thoughts? I'll start with you, Disha. Anything that you would like to end on as we wrap up?
I would just say, kind of having this conversation reminded me about why I made certain decisions with my career. So like if you all could just kind of think about what motivates you, and 10 years from now, like if you this is the Amazon, if you wrote a press release about yourself, like what would you want to write, and kind of really think about that and make some decisions. I think that'll serve you well. And I honestly, not plugging Ama La Vida, but kind of plugging them. If you've never talked to a career coach, just do it one time. You will really, like, I was the most skeptical person in the world when I talked to my career coach. And then
me too.
Part 3, I was crying, and I'm not a crier. And I was like, what is happening? Why am I crying about work? Work is fine. But I realized there were like some deep-seated like things that I was unsatisfied about at work. And sometimes you need a little bit of help in terms of uncovering that. So definitely check out Ama La Vida. And that free career coaching class. I might take you guys up on that.
Well, I just dropped the link in a chat, and I forgot to mention that if you come from a webinar, you get a discount. So it'll be, if you sign up for a personal coaching membership, you get your first session free. If you end up signing up for a pro membership, we have other discounts that we'll be able to give out as well. So definitely grab that. The calls are fun. They're so low pressure. Our sales team's amazing. So I can't plug it enough. So with that, Nicole, any closing thoughts before I wrap up?
I'm going to do another plug for Here. Please go check it out. They have incredible products, like really amazing producers on there. They were just an official partner of the James Beard Awards. So you can, if you have fancy friends who that is interesting too. Are the gift boxes still available?
Yes, they are.
They have James Beard award-winning products in these gift boxes. So if you are like me and are constantly like, what am I going to get this person? It's in 2 days. We just solved all your problems. So please go check it out. You will become addicted. And thank you, Disha, for your infinite wisdom and friendship.
Yeah, and thank you for having me, Nicole. You guys were amazing. Thank you so much.
I love all the love. So with 1 minute to spare, I will say I will be sending out, our team will be sending out a recap email in the next day or so. It will include the webinar recordings as well as all of the links. And this is about to become a series. So stay tuned for more founder interviews with our founding females headed by our amazing founder, Nicole. Thanks, everybody. Have a lovely day.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Disha.
Yeah.